अगर हम grief की बात करें, I have a substantial amount of network on my Facebook.
Yeah.
A lot of people are connected. अब उसमें, you come across different kind of posts. Some people lose their parents, some people lose their loved one, etc., etc. अब उसमें there was a person who lost their parents during COVID. So अब उसमें I noticed that person every week would post a picture of their parent. And this happened for like 8 to 9 months. Like ये होता रहा. So जो mutual में होते ना दोस्त, so one of them mentioned कि यार मतलब ठीक है हो गया, needs to get over. But so I told that person कि like everybody processes grief differently.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there is another guy whose mother passed away, and the very next day he was looking for khause. कि अच्छे वाले khause कहाँ से मिलेंगे. Again, that thing got discussed among mutual friends.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing. Everybody processes grief differently. Maybe this is his distraction. Okay, maybe this is how I can forget about my mother for a while, So, ye cheez, explain it further as a therapist. Why does it happen?
Grief is a very personal experience, yet a very universal experience. Just like love, right? When we fall in love, we think that we are the only one feeling this, yet everyone who has fallen in love, and they process love differently and do things differently. And grief is, in my view, love with nowhere to go, right? And if you look from the therapeutic framework model, right? So they've given different stages of grief. There is denial, there is anger, there is depression, there is acceptance, there is bargaining, all sorts of stages, right? So one person could be in denial phase, where it's like, "Ye hua hi nahi hai." So if I don't think about it, it doesn't exist. And there's no right or wrong here. It's our brain's mechanism to absorb the shock of it. Because if we don't, it can become overwhelmingly painful. So we go in denial mode to kind of minimize it, deflect it, and try not to think about it, right? So that's one way of processing grief. The other could be staying in a lot of anger, feeling so angry, choti baaton ko gussa aana, because anger is a way, I say, is the bodyguard of pain. To reach sadness, we first have to cross anger. And that is why under the anger is a lot of sadness usually.
And anger comes from disappointment as well?
Anger comes from disappointment, feeling of being being treated unfairly. It's just ye ho kaise sakte hain? And then it's sadness, and sometimes sadness could also be, for some people, there could be a way of letting their sadness being witnessed. So social media, again, the different intention and thought process, but it's a great way of letting yourself being witnessed. So your friend sharing these pictures up on the page, and then people commenting on it, is a way to getting his grief being witnessed. And that's one way of processing grief. Right? Some people, grief has a cycle of its own, and some people might stay in denial throughout their life. And some people go into acceptance after some time. So not all grief is going to soften the heart. Right? Because सबसे बड़ा को बहुत धक्का लगता है अगर, तो you might stay in anger, and if you do not process your anger, you might stay as an angry person. मेरे साथ इतना बुरा हुआ है, मेरे साथ ये हुआ, I lost my parents and everything, and the world is a messed up place to live in. I don't trust anyone. All those kind of things, and you stay in anger. And what happens is we close our heart in this process. We harden the heart because it's so scary to stay in vulnerability and openness, and to be able to love again, and to feel joy again. Right? So grief has to be processed. And not everyone processes it.
And it's a subjective matter. हर बंदा अपने तरीके से करता है.
It doesn't have a timeline. It's not a linear thing कि पहले ये होगा, फिर ये होगा, फिर ये होगा. That is why when someone says 2 साल लगेंगे, 3 साल लगेंगे, I mean, there's no timeline to it, right? And what you do out of grief, I mean, I see siblings. So my siblings dealt with their grief in very different ways than I did, right? We've all had our own way of dealing and processing our grief. And I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong. It's a matter of personal choices as well in this process.
Acha, I read up a lot on stoicism. And उसका बेसिक टेनेंट जो है वो यही है कि यू कांट कंट्रोल द सर्कमस्टांसेस, सो यू हैव टू फाइंड पीस with what's happening. That is something that is not in your control. For example, we were supposed to meet today. अगर आज बहुत ज़्यादा बारिश हो जाती या कुछ भी हो जाता, you couldn't made, मुझे थोड़ी सी डिसअपॉइंटमेंट होती, लेकिन बारिश मेरे कंट्रोल में नहीं है. So I had to find peace with it. My mother got COVID. और so जब उनके सिम्टम्स हमें फील होना शुरू हुए, 2 दिन हो गए, बुखार भी था और कोविड पीक पे था, पूरी दुनिया में था, even though we were being very cautious and careful with distancing and everything. So we had one of those rapid test wali kit. So my brother conducted the test और वो लेके बैठ गया ड्राइंग रूम में, और 15 मिनट लगते हैं ना वो रेड लाइन को आने में, सी पे और टी पे. So वो वेट कर रहा था, and I was in the other room, and then his wife, my भाभी came and she's like कि हारिस रो रहा है. So I went there and he was crying like a baby. He's over 30 now. But crying like a baby. Why? Because वो positive है. अब I love my mother just as much as he does. ठीक है, but it didn't hit me, क्योंकि मैंने उसको इस तरह प्रोसेस किया कि यार ये एक चीज़ पूरी दुनिया में फैली हुई है, राइट? या तो होता ना कि इफ़ यू आर द ओनली पर्सन टू गेट इट, तो आपको डिसअपॉइंटमेंट होती कि यार ऑफ ऑल द पीपल मेरी माँ को ही क्यों हुआ, पूरी दुनिया को हुआ है, एंड लाइक नहीं रुक रहा है, इट्स अ पेंडेमिक. तो ये आज नहीं तो कल, कल नहीं तो परसों होना ही था. तो लेट्स सी हाउ इट गोज. तो मुझे फिर मैंने अपने आप को सोचा कि क्या मैं इतना हार्ड हो गया हूँ कि मैं आई एम नॉट इवन फीलिंग अबाउट माई ओन मदर. बट मैं उसको इसी तरह प्रोसेस कर रहा था कि यार आई कैन नॉट हेल्प एनीथिंग, ऑल आई कैन डू इज टेक केयर ऑफ हर एंड मेक श्योर लाइक डिस्टेंसिंग रहे, उनको मेड्स मिलती रहे, ड्रिप्स वगैरह, ऑक्सीमीटर और ये सारी चीज़ें होती रहे. तो बहुत डिफरेंस था हम दोनों के प्रोसेसिंग में. सो अगर आप किसी आम आदमी को बताओगे तो वो नेचुरली, वो मेरा भाई, उनको ज़्यादा अच्छा सही लगेगा कि देखो वो रो रहा था माँ के लिए और तुम तो बड़े पत्थर दिल आदमी, कुछ फील नहीं कर रहे थे. बट वी आर बोथ प्रोसेसिंग इन आवर ओन वेज.
I hear you. I also wonder in the family dynamics, maybe the brother was allowed, given space to express emotions, and being the older one, you have to be like the practical one and they do all the right, अब क्या इलाज करना है, क्या सारी चीज़ें करनी है. So the way we process is also based on the different roles we take in a family. But yeah, I completely get that.
अगर आपने ये क्लिप एंजॉय किए तो पूरी वीडियो देखने के लिए कमेंट पे दिए गए लिंक पे क्लिक कीजिए और मेरे मेन चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करना नहीं भूलिएगा, ताकि आपको वक्त के साथ साथ अपडेट्स मिलती रहें. बहुत शुक्रिया.